Hello and welcome to the Mike's DIY Tips channel on YouTube. I'm Mike, and in this video I'm going to show you quite a variety of solutions to DIY problems or methods of achieving an end result. So the first solution I want to show you is a simple padded rail on the garage wall to protect the car door when you open it, especially if you've got very little space in the garage. In my case I used a piece of chipboard, the length obviously to suit the garage wall and how far in or not so far in you park your car. I took a piece of carpet offcut, in fact it's in two lengths with a joint in the middle, and I've wrapped it around 75 by 18mm chipboard or 3 inch by 3/4 inch thick. The carpet is wrapped round and in my case stapled on the back, but you could use glue or other type of tacking, and it's fixed 3 times in the length. I would certainly suggest positioning the screws definitely where the car door will not hit, because you don't want the car door hitting the screw head. Another piece of advice is to adjust the height of the rail to suit the car door shape and size. Car doors are usually curved, so you want to make sure that the rail is at the point where the car door bulge is most likely to hit the wall. The next solution is out in the garden. I'm going to show you a simple way of fixing trellis to a fence, but leaving space behind so that the plant can grow and put its feelers around the trellis in order to grip. What I do is make spacers with offcuts from hose pipes so that they go behind there. So there's a typical spacer, it just goes behind there. You obviously need to choose the length of screw. I use a 2 inch or 50mm screw, and I use a cup washer behind the head, because as the head is sloping like that, on this thin type of trellis wood, you're in grave danger of splitting the wood. So by putting the protective washer on like that, we prevent the wood from splitting. Alternatively, if you've got them, you can use round head screws like that, which have a square shoulder which will sit very nicely down onto the trellis wood. Another strong recommendation I must make is don't just drive the screw through the trellis slat, because that again will probably split. So drill carefully a clearance hole. The clearance hole is just slightly fatter than the screw itself. Moving on to something quite different, suppose you want to drill a hole in the wall there. In this case it's a solid wall, so you're going to get lots of dust when you drill it with a masonry drill. As you can see, I've used an old envelope with some PVC tape to fasten it to the wall. I've punched out the corners to give a bit of throat depth here for the dust to fall in. And then you can carefully peel that off and put it on the next hole. You can probably do 2 or 3 holes before the adhesive on the tape starts to get a bit doubtful as to whether it will hold, in which case just put another piece of tape over the top, half on and half on the wall. Another tip is, if you've got a very hard wall or the battery in your drill is on its last legs, use a smaller diameter drill to start with, because it'll take a lot less effort to get the hole depth you require. Then you can enlarge the hole to the proper size with the correct size drill. In my toolbox I keep a supply of envelopes like this, so that's a big one, and I slide old envelopes in there like that. Now here's something else, a simple protector for a chisel. Piece of garden hose taped on. The hose is quite rigid and it's longer than the blade of the chisel. Those two using hose. This is a similar idea, except that it's a piece of extruded rubbery plastic which I've had for a long time. Again, positively longer than the chisel itself. The wider chisel won't go in the hose, so here is a very tough, solid centre core of a fax roll. It's simply cardboard, but it really does the job. Now, what's all this about? There could be a time in your DIY career when you're faced with needing to know the exact distance between the centres of two holes. It's usually something to do with fixing kitchen or bathroom fittings on the wall, and it's not always convenient to put the piece of metal up to the wall and scribe like that. And even when you've done that, you've still got to determine the exact centre to drill so that you get holes exactly matching the fixture. It's often easier and better to measure for yourself what that distance is. The problem is you've got to guess where the centre of that hole is and guess where the centre of that hole is. So instead, measure to the left hand edge here to the left hand edge there, and you will then get an exact dimension of what the distance is between the centres. So on a much larger scale, there's two holes. We simply measure either from the left to the left or right to the right, and that measurement there is 9.5 centimetres or 95 millimetres. Now, if you haven't got one of those rules, you're stuck with using one of these. Don't try and measure from the end. It's much easier to pick a definite stage along the rule, like 10 centimetres. Put that 10 mark on the edge of the hole, and the same here, and yes, I get the same measurement, 9.5. In actual fact, it measures 195 millimetres, so you have to remember to take off the 100 millimetres. I want to talk now about repositioning screws that are in the wrong place, and this can most likely be required with door hinges and some kind of wall fixed bracket. As you can see, this hinge is mounted cockeyed. Instead of being in line with the edge of this imaginary door frame, it's pointing over to the left. So to correct that, we need to move these screws, which means making new screw holes and thinking about what to do with the old ones. Likewise with this cockeyed bracket, we can move the bottom screw across this way or the top screw across that way to straighten it up. I've taken the two screws out here because we need to move the hinge across this way to line it up with the edge of the door frame, and I should point out that it's the centre line of that knuckle, not the side, which has to line up with the edge of the frame and the edge of the door. So having positioned the hinge in the correct position, now we can mark where we want the new screw holes, there like that. So now we need to fill the old screw hole, and I use a simple little crude peg which I've made, and I'll show you how to make these a little later on, with a bit of a taper on the end so that it will start in the screw hole and hammer in. Now you can use these dry without glue, but I, wherever I can, always prefer to use a bit of glue, because then you know they can't pull out. Not a lot of glue, just a little bit like that. So just drive it in as far as it will go. A little bit of surplus glue, get rid of that. Now then, I find the best way of cutting that off, you could use a little mini hacksaw, you could use a chisel, but I like to use a knife because it's nice and thin and you can get close to the face of the door frame. And that comes off as easy as that, and that's nice and flush. So I marked a new circle where the new screw hole should be, and so we want to put a mark in the centre of that circle. And I'm using a pointed brad awl. If you haven't got one of these, you could use a thin nail. At this stage you could attempt to put a screw straight in the softwood without a pilot hole, but I would prefer to always do a pilot hole to be sure of getting the correct position. Now what about this hole here? In actual fact we only want to move the screw across a tiny bit. And a trick I use quite a lot successfully is to use a flat bit brad awl like that, or you could use a small electrical screwdriver, but it needs to be a flat bit, not a cross top. And put that in the circle there. And what we've done, we've moved a little bit of the wood that was at the right side of the hole, we've moved it across to the left side, and then that should enable us to put the screw in a position a little bit further over. And now I'll show you how to make these little wooden pegs that we use to fill up old screw holes. We need to get a scrap of softwood with a nice straight grain. The length of the proposed peg is marked by that line there, so that this is the direction of the grain. So I'm cutting down now, down that line to give me the length of the peg. So I've cut down there, and what I'm going to do now is use a knife and a hammer to split off a thickness of that wood there, about 3 millimeters. And that nicely splits off like that. So next I'm going to split off again a piece of that, something like 3 millimeters from the edge. Do it by hand, probably don't need the hammer, just wriggle it a bit. So now we've got a square peg like that, and we need to just whittle it with the knife. Alternatively you can do it like this. So we've got a narrowed point on, which will give us a start in a screw hole, and we just need to take these other sharp corners off and the job's done. What I do is I like to be prepared, and I carry a little bag of these already made in different lengths and different thicknesses. I'm just going to talk about door hinges. They need to be oiled from time to time, especially if they're squeaking or getting very stiff. So first of all, we want some absorbent newspaper on the floor in case we drip any oil downwards. Some tissue paper required and a little can of handy oil, and then you just run a little bit of oil down the face of the hinge knuckle like that, work the oil into the cracks between, and then wipe off the surplus. And finally work the door backwards and forwards to work the oil into the hinge. And I would certainly suggest repeating that a couple of times. And make sure there's no oil underneath there. And then, if it's a really stiff hinge, you can close the door and do it on the other side of the hinge knuckle, so that you've got a good chance of the oil working in. Now let's talk about door lock maintenance. We're going to use oil, so don't forget you need some newspaper on the floor to catch any stray drips of oil. Now the lock has two parts. This is the latch bolt, goes in and out when you turn the handle, and this is the lock bolt. We don't usually need to bother too much about oiling that. This is the critical one, and whilst you might think you need the oil on there, in fact you really need it on the back of that latch bolt, because as you close the door, the strike plate on the door frame hits there and forces this back hard against the faceplate. So that's where you need the lubrication, just there. Just a tiny smear, then work the latch a little bit like turning the handle, and then wipe off the surplus there. We don't want a lot of oil on that when you're finished. You can, if you wish, put a tiny smear of oil on there, but be very careful, because anybody brushing past with nice clothes on could pick up an oil smear off there. You can put a tiny drop of oil there, top and bottom as well, but this is the most critical part at the back. Another aspect of door lock and latch maintenance is the repositioning of this striker plate. That's the plate that holds the door in position when it latches or when you turn the key and you lock it. But as you can see here, when I pull the door closed, it doesn't latch until I give it a tug like that. The way around that is to either take off the plate and move it over so that you're repositioning the screw holes like we did with the hinges. Alternatively, and this is probably better and easier, is to take off the plate and just file a bit of the metal on that edge there. Right, if you remember, I said we wanted to take a little bit off that edge there. So we'll grip it with some pliers like that, or better still some locking grips like that so that it won't slip out easily. I'm going to use a nice fine textured file which will give me good control. If you try and use a very rough file, you have to use more energy, and it's not such a precise process. So that's the edge we're filing, and I'm using a solid surface like this little step stool. Nice steady strokes, and don't keep the file in one place because then you'll get a step down, so keep moving it this way and that way as you do the filing strokes. It's a matter of judgment how much you keep on filing before you put this plate back on the door frame to try the door again. I suggest you file a little and try, file a little and try, rather than guess and then end up filing off too much so that when the door closes it actually rattles. Here's some final advice on lubricating hinges and door latches. Use your oil very sparingly. If you haven't got that liquid oil, you might have this spray can type of lubricant. The spray comes out and spreads out very quickly over the surrounding area, so keep the nozzle fairly close to the target area and just give little short squirts, and immediately wipe all the surrounding areas over quite a wide area to make sure that there's no contamination of the paintwork. One final thought: if you haven't got either of those two lubricants, you can stop a hinge squeaking or make a door latch work much better by using a drop of cooking oil. It won't last as long as these lubricants, it will dry up, but it'll solve your problem in the short term. So there you are then, That's given you a few more ideas on finding solutions to typical DIY tasks and problems. I hope you found it useful and interesting, and if you'd like to watch any of my other videos you can click on one of the icons appearing on screen now. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope we'll see you again very soon.